Hey guys, this is the Wiggle Man and welcome back to Wiggle's Miniature Workshop, where today we're going to be doing part 2 of my big project for the year, and that is painting a Bloodthirster. You all asked for it, so you're going to get it. If you missed part 1 of this big project for the year, the goal is to paint one of each of the greater demons. We've already done the Great Unclean one, and that can be seen up here in the corner in the doohickey. Go click it. And that went really well. So I've got my Bloodthirster printed out now. I've also got the other two, the Lord of Change and the Keeper of Secrets, already printed out, ready to go. So let us begin. So the Bloodthirster, it is one of my favourite models for Warhammer. I put a vote on the channel as to what we'd be painting next, and the Bloodthirster won by a pretty considerable margin, so thank you to all my viewers for picking that. I was kind of hoping you would, and you did. The Bloodthirster, to me, it embodies everything that's cool about Warhammer as a hobby. It's big, it's powerful, and yeah, it's, you know, you've got your Space Marine, that is your poster boy of Warhammer. But what really kind of embroils the world for me is it's the Bloodthirster, and I love it. So if you're new to the channel, if you've joined me just now, do please leave a subscribe and a like on the video if you want more videos like this. My next video coming up is going to be a unboxing of the Kroot Hunting Pack. That should be coming soon, and then we're going to be painting up the Kroot Hunting Pack, and there might be a little surprise at the end once that's all done. So what we're doing with the model at the moment is that we've started off with a very deep purple as our base layer. We've then airbrushed in some magenta. This acts as kind of our cold shadows onto the model. It makes it look a lot more interesting than if we were to just use black as our shadowed colour. It just plays off the red of the skin very well. And then we've worked our way up through kind of a gory red to a bloody red, and even using some highlights of an orange to kind of get a bit of a light, show the direction that the light's shining onto the skin of the model. And then for the kind of the upper facing shadowed areas, so kind of between the folds of the wings, between the hair, kind of where the hair meets the skin, we're using burnt umber ink, and we're spraying that through the airbrush just to add a bit more definition to kind of where one part of the body ends and another begins. So to matte the skin down, because it's still got quite a glossy finish onto it, we take AK Interactive's Rust Streaks and we spray it all over the model. Now this was before I did the review of the Villainy inks. I would have used the Villainy inks as an alternate in this case, but yeah, we've taken the AK Interactive Rust Streaks, we spray it all over the model, and then we do what is called the reductive technique, where we put some mineral spirits into a cup and we start using a cotton swab over the model to take the excess mineral spirits off the highest areas of the model, revealing the initial paint job that we've done underneath. Then we do a bit of good old brushwork. I took some of the Vallejo Game Colour Bloody Red, mixed that at a 1-to-1 consistency with some of the glaze medium, and we just did some brushwork back over the skin just to highlight some of the areas that looked a little bit more uniform after our enamel wash that we've done. So after doing 2 layers with the reds, we then took some Vallejo Game Colour Hot Orange. Now this is a very thin, a very transparent paint I find in my experience. And we mix that into our airbrush and we lower the pressure right down to about 20 psi. And we sprayed it very lightly over the shoulders, just as a bit of a test to see how it would look on the model. And actually, this is kind of where the direction changed a little bit for my initial vision in my head, which is something important to remember whenever you're painting a miniature. If something's looking good, try and make it look gooder, even if it goes against your initial vision. So laying down this through the airbrush, it gave this kind of volumetric light, looking like it was striking the front of the face and the top of the model's left shoulder. It made it look a lot more dynamic. So I went with it and I reinforced it, and I was really happy with how it turned out. So the next big challenge for painting a Bloodthirster that I find is you're painting red on red effectively. You've got a red-skinned demon wearing red armour, and it's very important to try and differentiate between your two different reds, so it doesn't kind of all mesh into one creature. So the approach I took for the armour was I based all of the armour, I took a much more kind of traditional Warhammer painting approach. I based all of the armour in Vallejo Game Colours Gory Red, which is a very kind of a scarlet red, and then I gave it all a wash with Agrax Earthshade. And then once the Agrax Earthshade wash was dry, we go back to our Gory Red, we reapply that essentially as a highlight layer, so we're leaving the dulled down effect of the Agrax Earthshade showing through, and then we just step up and layer on some more highlights, going to Bloody Red, and then Bloody Red mixed with a little bit of white, just to edge highlight and glaze over his upper left breastplate, just to help reinforce that lighting effect that we've done with the orange on the skin. The teeth were super duper simple. If you're familiar with how I paint teeth now, then you'll know this step from most of my videos. But if you're not, I'm going to remind you all, make sure you try to leave gaps between each tooth when you paint them in. It makes them look, it gives them a lot more depth, makes them look a lot more realistic. And so, for such a tiny, insignificant part of the model, it does add a hell of a lot to the final look. So for the teeth, we approach with a khaki base coat, and we're just being ever so careful just to fill it in as much as possible without going into the recesses of the teeth. And then we highlight that khaki with Vallejo Game Colours Bone White, one of my favourite colours of all time, and that gives the brightness to the teeth without being a pure white. For the tongue, it was just a simple case of applying some Vallejo Express Colour, and we're using a purple for that. I can't remember the name exactly, but we use a purple. I find contrast painty style thing purples are very, very good in this sense. So for doing the wings, the approach I took was to base it all in kind of a darker brown and start building up with a sepia ink initially, and through the airbrush we spray that sepia ink into kind of the main body of the main membrane on the wings. Then with each extra layer we add a little bit more of our bone whites into that sepia ink mix to kind of help with the transition into a more brighter wing. Then to finish off the wing and to add a lot of texture, because these wings are very, very textured, we take our bone white and we mix that down with quite a lot of glaze medium. I'd probably say 4 parts glaze medium to 1 part bone white. Take off as much of the excess off of our brush as possible, and then we just go ham. To be honest with you, I wasn't really paying attention to where I was laying down the brush strokes. I was just building up more and more brush strokes onto the wing to add to the texture from the model itself. If you've made it this far into the video, then welcome to the non-metallic metal painting part of the video. This is a technique that I've been practicing and practicing and practicing. I really, really think I nailed it on this project. It wasn't nailed quite how I thought. Initially, I was going for just kind of a normal steel looking non-metallic metal. However, it ended up looking more like a black steel, which fitted the theme of the model perfectly, to be fair. It wasn't the intention. But how we got there was the initial layer was painted down with a mixture of Vallejo Cold Grey and Vallejo Vallejo Model Colour Black. Important distinction to make, because Model Colour is infinitely better than the Game Colour Black. So Vallejo Model Colour Black. I put a bit too much of the Model Colour Black into the mix, and that made the base of the metallic look very, very dark. It didn't really change the approach I took to painting this model. However, I think it added to the final effect in that it gave us that kind of black metal look. So next we take just Vallejo Game Colour Cold Grey and we begin highlighting around all the edged areas. Now you can see on kind of the shaft of the axe, I'm not a weapon kind of a guy. You can see on the shaft of the axe that we use that as kind of a direction as to where we're going to paint our highlights in, because it's quite glossy. We follow that for our essentially a guide to painting the non-metallic metal, because we're just imitating glossiness on metal. So we go around the model and we pick out all of these kind of bits with our Vallejo Game Colour Cold Grey. We then take a little bit of Vallejo Game Colour Pure White and we add that into our mix, and we then start to trace around most of the hard edges around the model. So around the edges of the blade, and because the blade's quite worn, quite notched, we also paint a little bit into the divots of the blade. Not all the way, about 2/3 of the way in, and not over the entire blade as well, because then that adds that sheen of a reflection. But we do try to make sure that we go around and edge highlight the majority of the metallic parts of the model. And then finally we take some pure white on its own, we thin it down with a bit of water so that it runs off the brush smoothly, because that's very, very important when you're painting in edge highlights. And we essentially work within the areas of our previous highlight to reinforce that contrast, because when you're painting non-metallic metal, it's all about the contrast, going from quite large areas of the same colour to very high levels of a pure white. It's quite hard to kind of describe, but where, let's say you were highlighting a model traditionally, you'd paint an area and then you'd highlight 50% of that, you'd highlight 50% of the highlight, you'd highlight 50% of your highlights. This is more, you'd paint the model, you'd highlight 75% of it with your next level up, you highlight 50% of it with the grey-white mix, and then you highlight 25% of your highlights with pure white. Yeah, it's quite a hard one to explain, but that's kind of getting across the what's going through my head when I'm painting non-metallic metal. And then to finish off, we just go back over the model. This is looking from a bit of a further away perspective now. We go back with the pure white and just add a bit more interest into some areas, say around kind of his blades on his wrists and on the blades of the axe as well, to make it look a bit more dynamic, a bit more shiny, a bit more intimidating. Now onto the final part of the video, which is painting the base. So for the base, I took a similar approach to how I painted Vashtor's eyes, if you've seen my Vashtor video. So how we did that is that we took a pure white ink, titanium white, sprayed it through the airbrush across all the areas that I wanted to be lava-y looking on the base. And we did this very, very carefully, obviously, because we've got the model attached to the base because it's that big. It was very difficult to paint it without the base. And each time we paint the base white, we go from a red Vallejo Express, then we paint it white, then we go to orange Vallejo Express, then we paint it white, and then we go to yellow Vallejo Express. So that gives kind of the glow effect of the lava. We also spray a little bit of white onto the base as well, a little bit of pure white onto the base as well, over the yellow, just to make it a white hot look. Then we just simply take our brush and we paint in little black shapes, random shapes, to kind of signify cooled down rock on the surface of the lava. We're coming up to the end of the video and the big reveal, and bloody hell, this model, I had to take it outside to film it. It was that big. But I'm really, really pleased how it turned out in the end. I hope you liked it. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you've picked up something that you can use in your projects going further. I am sorry that I didn't get any footage of painting in the non-metallic metal brass trim on the model. If you want to see how I did that, you can go see my Thrall video, where I painted his belt thingamajigger, his sporran, in a very, very similar method. But yeah, thank you all for coming today. Please subscribe. We're nearly to the 3,000 watch hours part as well, so if you've watched this point, thank you very much. And have a wonderful day. Bye-bye for now.